another episode of Heilman and Haver, Get to Know a Theater. We are here at the offices of the Seattle International Film Festival with Beth Barrett, Artistic Director, and Stan Shields, Festival Programming Manager. We're excited to be here, and we thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedules. Yeah. Something, we heard a little bird saying on the way in that there might be a film festival coming up in a month or two. You guys are probably planning for, like crazy busy planning for, right?
Well, you know, just a little thing on the calendar.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's when most people hear SIFF, they think of just the film festival, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But can we start with a little bit of history of the organ, because it's more than just the film festival, right? It's an organization. So can we start with maybe just a little bit of history of the organization and bring everybody kind of up to speed with that? And then we'll talk about some of the programs that you guys do educationally and some of the events.
Yeah, absolutely. How far back do you want to go?
As far back as you want to take us. Let's go to the big bang.
So the organization was founded in 1976 by a couple of guys from Vancouver, BC, Dan Ireland and Daryl McDonald, who there was already a film festival in Vancouver, and they were visiting Seattle and realized that we didn't have a film festival, but we had this amazing international film-going culture with the Ridgeway, with a bunch of smaller cinemas, really, you know, at the time discovering, you know, the French New Wave and that sort of thing. And so they moved down here and literally took up space at the Moore. It was called the Moore Egyptian at that point, and they lived there, helped renovate it. And then in 1976, started the first Seattle International Film Festival with 18 films, including the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, fantastic. Any idea of how many people attended that first year?
Put
you on the spot.
That's an amazing question. My guess would be probably a couple thousand.
Right.
Very few. However, there are people who are still attending that were at that very first SIFF.
Oh, very cool.
They've been pass holders since the very beginning, and which is really amazing. And you know, it's this very longevity based kind of thing. We were at the Moore Egyptian for a handful of years, then moved up to the Egyptian in the early 80s, and kind of did the same thing. Lived there. They also had apartments. When they were at the Moore Egyptian, they kind of didn't have apartments. They were just, you know, squatting at the theater. They had apartments, but renovated it. It used to be an old Masonic temple. And so renovated it, and that became the home for the Seattle International Film Festival. The offices were behind the screen. Some of our longer term employees remember like smoking, sitting behind the screen while the movie was playing and smoking, and you had to be kind of quiet, and all these very different things. And it was at that point, it was Stage Fright. It was a for-profit entity that was essentially a cinema that ran a festival in one part of the year. We started being 25 days in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. It was originally only 18 days, and then it became 25 days when the budget hadn't quite gotten to a balanced level, so they just kept running the films, because at that point, of course, everything was on 35 millimeter. So they had the film, so they just kept running the films until they broke even, and that was it. It was 25 days, and there it stood for the next 40 years. And so we've sort of cycled through being at the Egyptian, running a theater, selling that theater back to Landmark, where then Landmark was at the Egyptian for a lot of years, being just a festival, which is, you know, it's a 25-day festival. It's not just anything. And then in the early 2000s, started doing a lot more one-off like mini festivals. Women in Cinema happened right in the late 90s, early 2000s. We did a couple of David Cronenberg series at SAM. And then in 2007, we opened the National Family Lecture Hall as SIFF Cinema and became an actual year-round organization. Ran SIFF Cinema there until 2011, when we took over the Uptown, which was an AMC second-run house for many, many years, and then was dark for almost a year while we were negotiating the lease on that. And then also in 2011, we opened the Film Center here, where we are now, which is on Seattle Center campus. 2014, we added the Egyptian to our year-round repertoire. And so now we run 5 cinema screens, 345, 50 days a year, and have run a traditional 25-day film festival, but in the last couple of years we've kind of streamlined it, and this year it'll be an 11-day film festival in 9 different locations around Seattle with our 5 screens and our amazing education department.
And obviously pre-COVID we're talking, but what is your attendance?
So pre-COVID it would be about 135,000 attendees over those 25 days. So we're going to be really interested to see what it looks like now in a hybrid situation in 2022. Last year we were virtual only, and our attendance was about 70,000 unique viewers, but we guesstimated that of those, most of them were not single viewers. So we did a little math and used the Sundance method and said there an average of 2 viewers per unique view. So we actually had about 120,000 people viewing virtual only. And so it's going to be very interesting this year as a hybrid to see, how we're going to engage with those audiences. If it's going to be in cinema, if they're going to be really into the virtual side, if there's a little bit of both, if people are going to make choices. It's fascinating.
When you did the virtual festival last year, was it an on-demand kind of thing where you could view it anytime, day or night, or did you have certain blocks of time of day when people had to kind of tune in?
Yeah, it was on demand for the majority of them. We had 3 or 4 films that were 48-hour blocks.
Yeah.
And 8 films that were only available in Washington State. Mm-hmm. So the majority, we had 90 films. The majority of them were available for the entire 11 days across the United States.
Wow. This has obviously grown exponentially over the decades. So that brings us to you two. So could you give us a little background on your involvement here and your job roles? Stan, we can start with you. Festival Programming Manager. It sounds pretty important. It's a big festival.
It is a big festival. The essential thing I do is that Beth is kind of the overseer of the overall organization artistically. And so my job is to collaborate with Beth on the general year-round programming, any programming for the big spring festival, as we're talking about, as well as the smaller festivals and series we do throughout the year. And as part of that, I kind of lead the programming team for selecting the films in the festival, and that's a pretty challenging and robust job to do every spring, but I'm kind of getting that all figured out so we can guide the team to a final selection for the festival. And then I try to shepherd, I shepherd all of those films and those filmmakers with varying degrees of experience all the way through the process of having a film at SIFF. So I kind of then hold their hands to whatever degree they need to get them from point A to screen.
How many submissions do you think you get a year?
It varies every year. Right now we have 2,827 submissions this year. 850 are features, the remainder are shorts. I know this because I look at the numbers every day. And we're powering through. But I also have a team of 27 programmers and a number of screeners on top of that to help us all work through them all and get through it. So we're closing in on having seen everything, and I'm looking forward to that day very, very, very soon.
You just provide a set of guidelines to the team for what you're looking for, and then they view it in the lens?
Sure. There's some variation within the groups, but everyone has kind of a direct mandate that we're kind of looking with a lens toward the quality of the film as well as the audience experience. And then on top of that, then Beth and I will add on other considerations depending on what the focus is about different countries, different sections, and what we can kind of explore in terms of the thematics we see inside of what's coming out that year, and maybe find different sidebars, different showcases to kind of talk about major themes and use the festival as a sounding board between the filmmakers and the community.
And how many different genres do you have?
I don't know that we count it by genre. First off, we're just looking at, is it a good film? Is it not a good film? Will people like it? Will people not like it? And then out of that, at the end of all of that, we're like, is it a sci-fi? Yeah, it is. Is it, so I don't really count them that way.
Gotcha.
So I haven't really tracked that number. We kind of do the more sections.
A lot of variety, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the great things we've always looked at for the construction of the festival is to be a survey of the best films of the last year, whether they were experimental or a comedy, sci-fi, horror, drama, wartime, all of the different things. And inclusive in that is to cover as many countries and communities as we can as well. So we say there's something for everyone in the amount of films that we bring, either in features or short film packages. So yeah, very broad, not necessarily very deep.
I noticed on your website that it said that many of the films won't be shown. You won't be able to see them outside of this film festival or outside of the state of Washington even. How does that process work? Are they restricted to this individual festival or to a festival circuit?
It's a lot more restricted to the festival circuit, and not really restricted, but just not picked up for further distribution. So the majority of the films that we'll screen just won't find a U.S. distributor, won't find a place in the U.S. theatrical system. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of that is really changing with different streaming services picking up films, but there's a lot of times that a streaming service will pick up a film and it'll just and it's gone. That film is available on that service, but the likelihood that you will run across it through casual viewing and browsing is so low. Mm. And so one of the things that festivals are really excelling at and are necessary for is that kind of curation of, you can look at a festival's lineup and say, that sounds fascinating, and then find it within the miasma of a streaming service that, say, has 50,000 titles. And unless it comes up into you should watch this, most people won't know that it even exists. But a lot of films, especially a lot of international films, just don't even get that chance to be picked up on a US streaming service. So these screenings really provide that access for those filmmakers and for those audiences who then can start looking for it and telling other people about it.
And we jumped ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a little background on your time here and as artistic director?
I'll just keep talking.
There you go. Go ahead.
I started here in 2003 as a volunteer in the publications department, and then I was an employee in the publications department the next year, and was also hired to take over the programming coordinator position. And then as the organization has grown, I've been the coordinator, the manager, the director of programming, and then in 2016 became the artistic director. I've been going to the festival since 1994. It's one of the first things. I moved here in October of 1993, and I was really I was like, okay, I am going to go to the festival, and I got myself a couple tickets. The next year I had a 6-pack. The next year after that I had a 20-pack. The next year after that, it's just, now I don't know if I could do it without a pass, because you get that feeling of access, and you're like, yes, this is how I'm going to be. But attending films and being in line and hearing other people talk about films and thinking, oh, I should go see that. I should go see that. And I would go through the schedule and circle the ones that weren't coming out into the cinemas, that I didn't have a chance to see again. And it was an incredible education on international film those early years.
Sounds like it.
Now for this year's festival, we talked about last year with the virtual. Now you said it's hybrid, so there's some, I assume they're going to be virtual and some in person. How many venues are there for the in-person?
We're at 9.
Nine venues.
9 venues.
How far is it easy to get back? To go between venues? Is it something that somebody is going to have to sit down with kind of a scorecard almost and look at? I want to look at them here. I want to here, and I've got to coordinate my visit. Is that how that works?
Both.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always been one of the things that is it's called the Seattle International Film Festival, and we want to make sure that we are actually out in the communities of the city. So that's one important aspect of it. For each neighborhood has some representation as much as we can provide to have films in their neighborhood. But that also means that if you want to see that film, you may need to go to this neighborhood that you don't go to very often. But that's your opportunity to go to this neighborhood you don't go to very often. So I think it's one of the great draws of it. And back in the era when Beth and I were both attendees, I would literally sit down I would mark out what I wanted to see, and then I would pull up the Metro website, and I would plot out when I had to get on which bus to get to this place and that was. I didn't want to have to park, because that could take half an hour and I would lose my chance. So I just wanted to buy a bus pass and just go from place to place throughout the city. And I would never have gone to some places if I hadn't done that.
Sounds like part of the fun.
And I was just a Capitol Hill kid going from the Egyptian to the Broadway Performance Hall to the Harvard exit and back again. And just skipping there.
Well, that brings us to another question. Because it's more, the organization is more than just the film festival.
Yes.
We talk about the neighborhoods. Can you talk a little bit about some of the educational programs and some of the things that you do within the community to help bring film to some of these areas?
Yeah, absolutely. Our education department serves about, in the before times, served about 20,000 kids through the course of the year. We have filmmaking camps, both here in Queen Anne, and we have a terrific partnership with Langston to do filmmaking camps for Black youth, which is great. It's an amazing partnership. We've been able to do camps for kids up in Shoreline, down in Renton, out in Ballard, some in Kirkland over the last numbers of years. So we really are trying to sort of give young people the ability to learn how to tell their own stories, because it's so important, and to learn how stories are told so that they are more media savvy, that they can understand. Oh, look, we've gone to a screensaver. So that they can.
It's a nice background. I was just
yeah, exactly. So that they can understand how, how who tells the story is as important as the story is being told.
Right.
We also do adult education. So tonight we have a class which is part of our five-part class called Banned, about films that were so controversial that they've been banned by their countries, which is great, working with John Trafton, who's a local educator at Seattle University. And so we've reached people in a lot of different ways. And with this sort of fall into hybrid, we've really capitalized on that with our classes. So the courses are taught in person, but also hybrid. So you could be at home or you could be here and have a similar experience with the classes.
So the film festival this year runs from April 14th to the 24th. We've talked a little bit about how COVID impacted things in the past and how you guys switched to hybrid or virtual and now hybrid this year. Will there be a large number of directors and folks who are involved in these films coming to give talks and things like that for the live events that are happening this year?
I mean, we're looking at to have a substantial presence of directors in town.
Right.
That's one of those things that always kind of depends on, once we figure out what the films are,
right.
How far away is that director,
yeah.
and how close will he be at the time of the festival?
Yes.
So a lot of that kind of gets dialed in over the next couple of weeks as we kind of begin to get a better idea of our final lineup, and we figure out where they'll be at the time that we might want to have them in town.
Excellent.
Yeah. This year is also a little more complicated, obviously,
yeah.
with
Mm-hmm.
travel and COVID. But our goal is to have representation for most of the films, because that's what really is that experience, is meeting those directors, meeting filmmakers, being able, the filmmakers being able to meet the audience. It's just as important for them to have that engagement as
right.
it is for the audience to engage with the filmmakers.
And speaking of COVID, we're all masked up
Yes.
here at your headquarters. What kind of special COVID precautions can folks who come to the live events expect?
Yeah, we're requiring full vaccination, so we'll be checking vaccine cards. At this point, we don't have an option for unvaccinated folks with testing. And we fully expect that to go into and through festival. Though, as things change on the national CDC level in King County, we're really paying attention to the science and to the recommendations coming down from King County and the city of Seattle.
Good.
Yes, thank you all.
Yeah, does full vaccination include booster? That's
It will. We think.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out exactly how to do that. Is it a shot within 6 months? Because some of the early, like, for example, I had an early booster, and so my booster will not be valid 6 months at festival. So
sorry, you can't come.
No, I know. Right? I'm like, I'll just give it
After
a
all this
shot. I'm
work.
totally fine with that. But like, what does that really look like? What
Yeah.
is considered fully vaccinated? And I think for that we're really looking at the CDC and the county.
Yeah, like you said, those things change.
Yeah, to really outline what the safety precautions are.
And having the hybrid option for those who are immunocompromised.
Exactly. Or you make a choice. You go and see a couple of films on a Saturday. You're like, I'm going to lay low for a couple of days.
Sure.
Watch some films at home. I'm good. I'm fine. go back out on Tuesday. It really offers people the option and the opportunity to participate fully in the festival, while yet really paying attention to their own safety and to their own feelings.
Well, and you guys are as close as anyone we've spoken to the festival circuit, obviously. Do you foresee that being the new paradigm as we go forward beyond COVID, as far as a hybrid option for most folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what everyone has discovered, whether they expected to or not, is that there are huge swaths of the community and the population that were not being reached in the previous model.
Right.
I think that when we talked about the discrete views we could see in the breakdown, we saw people from places that we've just never had any access to them, and they have never had access to us. And I think it was that recognition that there are communities that are hungry for this content, and our job really is to provide it for people. And so it's to find that bridge, to bring it to them. And I think that as we begin to figure out and dial in more in terms of the data and communication with those people via our comment sections and whatnot, we figure out how we can really bring it to them and really serve them well. And I think that's going to be a growing section of this, especially as the technology is so available to do it.
Right.
It's just a question of figuring out who needs it and how to get it to them.
How to deliver it, right?
Now, on the hybrid side, is it in either, or are the films that are in person also available remotely, or is it okay?
Yeah, all films will be presented in person, and a portion, we're hoping a large portion, we're still working on some negotiations with some of the distributors, will also be available in a virtual. There will be films that won't be available virtually due to distribution requirements and restrictions.
Now, it's obviously an international film festival, and you mentioned international films before. How far, or I guess what I want to ask is, what's the, I don't know, not the strangest place you've gotten a film from, or maybe the most remote place that you've gotten a film from?
I'm going to go with the Marshall Islands.
Wow.
We had a great little film from the Marshall Islands, what, about 6 years ago, something like that, which was a totally new view of a place that none of us had ever been and will likely never go, mostly because it's sinking into the sea because of climate change, and the Marshall Islands are very soon not to exist anymore. So it wasn't just this ability to use film to tell a story native to that particular community, but also to document it and to be able to celebrate the life of that island, but also, you know, the passage of time.
Speaking of time, yeah, Greg's excited for the Noir City Film Festival to return to SIFF. Can you guys talk a little about your relationship with the Noir City Film Festival, and its mass, and what our listeners can expect and how they can come and get involved?
Sure. Noir City is a series we've done almost annually. I believe this is the 14th one altogether. And we have been doing it. It will happen February 11th through 17th, so starting this coming weekend. And it'll be held entirely at the SIFF Cinema Egyptian up on Capitol Hill. And what it is it's an opportunity to look back at the history of film noir over the course of a series of films for a week, with the added bonus that we are able to work with Eddie Muller from Turner Classic Movies Noir Alley, who's a well-renowned author and scholar on the whole process and the whole history of film noir. And he comes to town and not only is there to kind of help us, well, he selects the films and then kind of we debate with him, but it's his selection. And then he gets to go up and introduce the film to audiences who may have never had a chance to see it. He's on the board of the Film Noir Foundation, whose whole mission is to restore lost or believed lost films, so there is one pristine print somewhere in the world. And that relationship with him allows us to show those films often for the one time they may ever get seen in the city of Seattle.
Wow, fantastic.
And Eddie's going to be here the first few days.
Yes.
And I think Saturday, you mentioned he's going to be here selling books and signing books.
Yes, he has a new edition of his book, Dark City. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yes,
It's a
Dark
wonderful
City.
book. By the way, if you go pick it up if you haven't come Saturday. And then
The program is loosely based on that concept of the Dark City and the different neighborhoods, noiry neighborhoods within that. And he'll be here on Sunday. And then he has, he's a very busy man. He's actually flying off to record some TCM introductions. So we're really thrilled to have local authors, Vince and Rosemarie Keenan, who write some amazing noiry books. here to introduce the Monday through Thursday screenings. So there'll be a little bit of background, a little bit of added adventure.
Looking over your offerings for this month here in February, got some great stuff coming up. In National Theater Live, King Lear, featuring Ian McKellen. Cyrano, featuring Peter Dinklage, one of our favorite actors. And so there's films being shown throughout the year, and that may be something, again, people think of the festival one time a year, but you guys have a lot of amazing things going on all throughout the year. What are some other events, along with the films that are just continually being shown that you can find on your website? What else is planned post-April, once the big boy is all, all wrapped up in? You guys can take a breath.
Post-April.
You just can't even, it's just all a blur.
Just keep saying
Vacations,
I mean,
vacations being taken probably,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, Stan's going to Hawaii. We do have the Science Fiction Fantasy Short Film Festival coming up in May
cool.
21st to 22nd, which is great. We've been working with Mopop for 12 years now on that. It's a collection of great science fiction shorts. We'll be back, into the cinemas with lots of international films, a lot of festival bringbacks. So a lot of, films that we know will be popular during the festival, we bring back for a theatrical run afterwards, so that if you missed it in the festival, you could catch it there, or you could plan to catch it at the cinema and option a different film that you might not, you might not know as much about, but might be that true discovery.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful to have those options.
Yeah.
So will the folks attendees know which ones will be scheduled to return prior to the April event, so they can kind of plan ahead or a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay to say we'll get back to you on that.
We'll get back to you. No, we'll have the cinema schedule because,
Sure.
because we're only 11 days, the marketing will be continuous. It's
True.
no longer is it, okay, this is the month, and it takes out every other cinema experience in the city. It's 11 concentrated days spotlighting the best international and independent film of the year. And then we'll go right back into the film festival year round, where we have a little bit of documentary, a little bit of international titles, a comedy.
Yeah, again, a lot of variety.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole idea. When we first started thinking about opening up a cinema, our idea was to bring the film festival to Seattle on a year-round basis, that it would always engage different communities at different levels, that we had enough multiplexes doing mall films,
Right.
for lack of a better word. And at the time, there was a really vibrant landmark. Landmark cinemas were operating. They were operating the Egyptian and the Harvard Exit and the Metro and all these. And as some of those have closed, it's been even more important for us to keep to that mission and to keep bringing those films that may fly out under the radar of
Sure.
folks, and to keep bringing them and having them have that cinematic experience and really being that home for the experience of a film festival every day.
When you're programming a film festival, you're getting these thousands of films in. Are there certain blocks that you have that are set every year, science fiction, experimental, things like that? Or does that change on a yearly basis that, hey, we're getting a lot of this specific kind of film, so hey, let's block these together?
I would say that while there are some things that are pretty much we do them every year, it's because there's always more great content of those sections. We almost always have done a Face the Music program because there's lots of films about the intersection of music and film and how those things interplay with each other. We always have that. We always have lots of wild kind of genre films that we put into our WTF section, standing for wild, titillating, and fantastic.
Signed up for those, aren't we?
And then we have lots of things by geographical area, but then we also kind of focus on what are we seeing? What is the new thing? We have a culinary cinema program because the city is very into its food and worship of food, and if you can't always get to the restaurant, you can at least see a possibility of what you might be able to eat sometime in the near future. And then we play it by ear. Every year there's going to be a sidebar, a focus of some kind that we discover out of the submissions themselves.
Do you guys have a favorite genre? Stan, we'll start with you.
Oh, well, see, I tell everyone all of my kids are pretty. So I love so many different kinds of film. It would be unfair of me to say that. No, that said, I do spend a lot of time watching documentaries, and I do spend a lot of time watching genre stuff when I'm not watching something that for work, which is not very often.
Beth?
Scandinavian dysfunctional family drama.
Oh, okay.
Also / comedy, which are very similar.
Very specific.
In Scandinavian, the comedies are always dark.
Something for everybody.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners keep up with all things Seattle International Film Festival, get tickets, and do you guys have a donation program? Can people volunteer? I did see some posters looking for volunteers for the event, things like that.
Yeah, we're really excited, to be sort of back into the swing and having volunteers and having people come in again. So our website is siff.net, SIFF.net. It's very clean. And there you can find out everything we're doing in the cinema, in education, ways to volunteer, ways to give, ways to be partnered with us in community, ways to engage with film in lots of different methods, both virtually and in person at any of our 5 cinemas, and then when we're in external venues as well.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you guys taking the time with us today. I know you're both extremely
thanks
busy
for coming to talk to us.
lots of work yet to do, I'm sure. Beth Barrett, Artistic Director, and Stan Shields, Festival Programming Manager. We're going to do our best to continue to promote and get the word out about you guys. We'll have all the links, obviously, in our show notes, and hopefully we'll see you guys in April.
Yeah. What are your favorite genres?
Yes.
We're just going to end with that.
I can't. The Scandinavian, that's so. I do love a good documentary. I'm an educator by day, and it's really fun to show, volcanoes, to the kids. It just blows their minds, and these amazing shots that people get. People who are just passionate about all these specific little things around our beautiful world,
Yeah.
But good comedy. Never say no to a good comedy.
Yeah, I appreciate and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but the artistry behind animation. I love animation. Kind of the combination of story with art and the interpretation of the art to that story. So it's that's probably, I'll say animation.
Buddy comedies, big into buddy.
Yeah.
Buddy comedy. Yeah.
Who doesn't love a good animated
That's right.
buddy comedy?
That's right, exactly
The
right.
next
That's
will
a
be
documentary.
The road to Port Orchard.
It's from
That's Scandinavian
that's
documentary.
right. Well, thank you both again. This has been a lot of fun, and we're so glad to be able to come in and meet you. And it's been just so interesting to learn the history, and there's so much work going into this. It's always a labor of love for you guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming over.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.